Lochoyo sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda belge drolor zampe ze parche palden lame shabla solwade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishasa Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishasane Karm Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishasane Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishasane Karm Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudan dagi alu, pakyuke sundan dagi nga, pakyuke tukdan dagi, ten yerme çiktu çingi alu, makyuke kudan dagi alu, makyuke sundan dagi nga, Makyuke tuğdan da geyi, ten yerme çıktı çingilo. Om Muni Muni Maha Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakyamuni Swaha Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam Lai Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chin Dagi Cheshe Gibe Sonam Kim Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chin Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparish Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparashu.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Aye ke da ludan neje ke rubun da mi ke nam dan rowa kun ke danam che champa tham che ke tu da ge che ten.
It's told that one of the greatest qualities of Buddha Shakyamuni was his ability to teach and guide everyone according to their own abilities, to bring take everyone in the same direction, but according to the abilities that each one had. Also, it's said that when Buddha left his body, his disciples came together, and there was a kind of, let's call it, chaos, because they would say, well, Buddha told me this, and the other disciple would say, oh, no, instead of this, Buddha told me this, and not in simple things, but even in with regards to the ultimate nature of reality. In one case, he said reality exists, fire burns, water wets. And in other cases, he says nothing exists independently of your own mind. And in another case, again, he said it's the middle way. And then another case, he said it's not, without getting into all these details, but Buddha explained things in ways that were seemingly very different. This is one of his great abilities, because when we have the task of giving, the first thing we should look at is not what is given, but what the other person needs. This act of giving requires at its basis it requires humility, humbleness, because when one gives, when I give what I want to give, in reality, I want to be the one who is giving. But my priority isn't be the one who gives, but actually be supportive of the one who needs on the other side. So here's the question. What do you need? So giving requires, first of all, understanding, seeing the other, and adapting to his needs. This reminds me of Lama Michel Rinpoche. Sometimes he seemed a little bit like a chameleon. It was incredible. According to the context in which he found himself, and depending on who he was with, he would transform himself, adapting himself really to the other people's needs. It was crazy. Many times I was very touched, because at a certain point, I mean, we want to stay on our version of the things. Instead, he had this ability to adapt himself. All of this to say that in Buddha's teachings, one crucial point is that there are different approaches to get to the same place. After Buddha's death, 4 main schools were created. The 4 schools because the various disciples got together in 4 different groups according to how Buddha taught. There's the Vaibhasika school, the Sautantrika, the Chittamatra, and then the Madhyamika Sautantrika. The first is divided into 14 schools, and then into two and two different schools. I mean, why are there 18 schools? that first one, because it's where he taught monastic views, for example, except that he taught monastic views in different ways according to the context in which he found himself. So traveling constantly in the different cultural needs, and there were different needs. In some places, he said that vows should be taken for life, and once you leave them, you can never take them again. In another place, he said that vows should be taken for a limited time, and then if you choose how long you want to take them, it doesn't have to be for your whole life, and if you leave them, you can take them again. And so, 18 different schools were created, and in some schools there are the um, different vows. In in some schools there are some vows, and in other schools other vows don't exist according to the needs of the time. And what's really important that Buddhist teachings, according to the different traditions, they seem contradictory. If we take specific points and we confront them, they seem contradictory. For example, the first two schools of thought, the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika, it's where Buddha explained phenomenon on a very objective level. He said that reality exists, and let's try to understand it. It's where he says reality exists on the basis of its own characteristics. You know, whether you like it or not, fire burns. You can believe what you want, but I can believe as much as I want that this is water, but if it's actually grappa, it's going to make the effect of alcohol, of grappa. I saw this happen once in Brazil in 1992. There was a Geshe Losangtempa, and he had gone to Brazil to teach in a center that wasn't one of Lama Ganchen's centers, but for various reasons that center closed, and he came practically from Tibet. He had spent his whole life in the monastery. He was very traditional, and he got to Rio de Janeiro to teach. And this very lovely woman who went to greet him, she went to hug him, and he just was running away from her, saying, "What's going on?" He wasn't at all used to being hugged, and she was very upset. Said, "Oh, you talk so much about compassion, and you can't even touch me, you can't even hug me." And so there was a cultural problem of a misunderstanding. In any case, that and that center closed. So let's say that he and his translator came to our center as a kind of refuge. It was a really beautiful relationship was created with our center, with my mother who hosted him. And one day he went to the center, and he was to do a blessing ceremony called Rabne. And in the ceremony, there's an inner offering like I have here, and inside this object, normally we put alcohol, wine, or black tea. You can do it in different ways. In just a few words, this object represents the body and mind transformed, without getting into details now. And it was really hot, and during the ceremony, it was at the beginning, he asked for a glass of water and a glass with some alcohol. And so they bring him 2 glasses. He took the glass to drink the water, and he just threw the water down. In India, I don't know if someone's ever seen this, that normally when we drink water, first we put the liquid in our mouth and then we swallow. Instead, in India, they open up their throat and they just throw the liquid down. And he took a glass more or less like this, and he just swallowed it right away, except it was grappa. I mean, imagine this man, 55 years old, who had never had a drop of alcohol in his whole life, and then all of a sudden he drinks an enormous enormous glass of grappa. I mean, he had a hard time finishing the ceremony. He went home and drank tons of water. So this first school says reality is objective. Grappa is grappa, regardless of whether you think it's water. Water is wet, it gets you wet, and fire burns. If you throw something up, gravity will pull it down. There is an objective part to things. And in these first two schools, Buddha explains, like in the first school, he talks a lot about how things work. Almost like from a scientific perspective. He says reality exists, it's concrete, but what you see is not the object. What you see is it's the light that touches your eye. I mean, there's this whole analysis of material reality, and he explains that material reality does exist. And in the second school, there's the part of also this psychology, knowing the mind, how the mind works, what are the functions of the mind, how they're classified. There are 6 different cognitions, different types of the mind. It's a really beautiful subject that we're not going to open now. I have this problem when I open up, I do an introduction that then becomes longer than the topic I want to talk about. But even together with this school talks about the part of our mind and body, but from a very objective way. And in the description of reality, it says that reality exists in a material way. There is a material reality based on its own characteristics. So no matter how, regardless of how you listen to the sound, the sound waves come to you. Regardless of how you live water, whether I live water in one way and you live water and experience it in another way, the water is going to get us wet. And so this is explained in the first 2 schools. The third school, called Chittamatra Sen Sampa in Tibetan, which would mean mind-only school, he goes to the other extreme. He says nothing exists independently from the mind. And this, among all the schools, it is the most difficult to study and understand. Lama Tsongkhapa wrote a book, and it said that it was the hardest book for him to write. It's a classic, very special philosophical text where he studies, he analyzes all schools and makes distinctions between what Buddha explained, what he said, and what is the definitive meaning and how it should be interpreted. It's very complex and it represents years of study. Anyway, in this school, he says that reality depends on the mind. It doesn't exist beyond the mind that perceives it, because everything that exists based on the interaction. Things are the way they are as a result of the interaction of the actions of beings. Even matter depends on this interaction coming from the mind. No one is able to perceive anything independently of himself. So he goes to another extreme where everything exists exclusively based from the mind. Nothing exists beyond the observer. And then the fourth school, the Madhyamika, which is actually called the middle way. And there are 2 versions. There are 2 schools. There's the Madhyamika Sautantrika that says reality exists, but it's a union of objects of perception and observer. The sound has characteristics of its own, but doesn't exist for me independently of the value that I attribute it to it. Water has its own characteristics, but it doesn't exist to me independently of how I perceive it. And then there's the last school that says nothing exists independently of the mind that perceives it. Nothing exists in a separated, autonomous way, but that doesn't take away the fact that matter and reality it does exist. Explaining all of this to you, I told you I like these subjects and I get into them. I'm trying to hold back on some points. What I want to get is that these four schools apparently, if we look at specific points, they seem as if they were in opposition when instead they're complementary. They're described as steps of a staircase before understanding that reality depends on how I perceive it. I need to understand that reality does exist. Otherwise, I fall into nihilism. So each one is necessary to be able to understand the next. And this is very important that Buddhist teachings, even if they might seem contradictory in some points, they're actually complementary. This is important because otherwise we say, there are four schools, which one do you want to follow, the highest or the lowest? We all want to be Madhyamika Prasangika, the highest view of the correct view of reality. We all want to, what vehicle do we want to follow? The small or the super mega Vajra vehicle? No, we all want to be the Vajrayana practitioners. But here's a little detail. You can't access the first vehicle if you haven't passed through the first one. If I say, what step do you want to be? I want to be on the highest step. But I'm at the top step and I'm looking at that last step saying how beautiful I'd like to be there, dreaming of being there. But instead, we need to take that first step where we are. It's important to look forward, look up, but at the same time, walk according to our, the length of our own legs and where we are. And if we summarize all systems, it can be all Buddhist teachings. I mean, there are many different ways to summarize them. One way is to see it like this. There's the Hinayana, and the path of the Hinayana, the small vehicle or capacity, scope, small scope, or it's where anyone. Here we take care of ourselves. It's this ability to recognize what our needs are, and we actually take care of these needs of ours. So what is a higher scope? Taking care of ourselves or taking care of all beings? Taking care of, a higher scope would be taking care of all beings, and a lower scope would be taking care only of ourselves. But that lower scope is fundamental to access the higher scope. So in the Hinayana path, our practitioners, we take care of our own needs, where I see that I look at where my suffering comes from. What can I develop? I realize I need to meditate to pacify my mind, to develop antidotes to my own poisons, to be well using the resources I have. And the next step is where I understand when I enter into the Mahayana, why do I do this? I'm not doing it for myself. Like the passage we read today from the Hasidic Jewish tradition, but could perfectly be part of the Mahayana tradition. We say we do it not for myself, but I do it so that I can support and serve and help others. And here we get into the Mahayana tradition, and within the Mahayana vehicle, there are two levels. There's the path of the cause and the path of the result, and and there's a big difference in meditation, and this explains why we're talking about this now. In the causal path, one recognizes his own mental defilements, sees them in himself, tries to understand what the antidotes are, apply the antidotes, and gradually we try to avoid, try to apply the correct antidotes, and we try to avoid our negative defilements. In the resultant path, what we do is I recognize where my mental defilements are, but I'm going to identify myself with the final state. For example, I'm sick. I recognize the sickness, but I'm going to identify myself with a state of health, and I'm going to live as if I were already cured, so that gradually I do cure myself. I'm not a Buddha yet, but I'm going to act as if I'm going to identify myself with a state of love and gratitude, respect, generosity, etc. And by identifying myself with that state, gradually I familiarize myself with those traits. I'm simplifying too much, but there's a following difference. On this path, the main fire is not given to the mental defilements, recognizing the darkness and eliminating the darkness. Instead, here we identify with the light, with the antidote. I connect with the part that I need to develop, but not looking towards the result and walking gradually. I mean, it is a graduated path, but I am bringing the result into my path, and I act as if I had already reached my objective, as we've said right from the beginning. It's all a question of familiarization. It's a question of being able to familiarize our mind, act in a certain way, think in a certain way, so that gradually our mind gets used to one thing or another. One thing that I think that is the utmost importance, it might seem strange, it's very difficult actually for us, this ability we have to dream, to desire what goes beyond what is reachable, within our reach. Because if you ask yourself what you want, even on a spiritual level, let's set all those philosophical things aside. But what do you want? I want to be at peace with myself. I want to live life well. I want to be well with the world. I want to help others. I mean, we travel on a relatively easy level here. Simple things. We don't say, I want to have a state of omniscience and love all people with equanimity. I'd like to be able to see this present moment and also be able to simultaneously understand the past and the future. It's pretty rare that we have these kinds of dreams, of kind of ideas. But dreaming, this ability to believe in a utopia, is what pushes us to walk. It's what takes us beyond. So in the Vajrayana Buddhism, there are different aspects. One important aspect is that our qualities are represented in aspects, in archetypes, if we want to use this term, these embodiments that represent those qualities developed to their maximum possibility. If we take any representation of a Buddha and we see their characteristics of a Buddha, there is not one characteristics of a Buddha that doesn't make reference to a characteristic that we don't have now. It's not that at one point one acquires characteristics. No, we transform what we already have. It's said that a Buddha has 4 bodies. They have strange names. Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. And we try to translate them and we don't understand anything. The body of essence, enjoyment body, the body of emanation, and the how many bodies do we have? We also have 4 bodies. We have a gross body, a subtle body, a very subtle body, and the 4th one, which is not really a body, but it's like lack of inherent existence of the body. So we can talk about 3 bodies. So in samsara we have 3 bodies, and once we reach enlightenment, we reach enlightenment with 3 bodies, which doesn't mean we are in 3 different places. It just means we exist on 3 different levels. To say that when we look at the qualities of a Buddha, it's what we already are today, but the traits and the developed to their maximum potential. If we look at these 5 Dhyani Buddhas, for example, they're not gods that we make requests to. Instead, these are our characteristics that we have today, but actually developed to their maximum potential. Basically, testimonials saying you can do it too. Your mind has potential that you don't even realize. You don't realize how special it is. And then we have the male and female aspects. And here I will just quickly tell you the story of Tara. It's said that Tara is one of the most common divinities. It's said that many, an epic, at a time before Buddha Shakyamuni, there was the princess Yeshe-dawa, which means the wisdom of the moon. And she was a marvelous woman who helped many, many people materially. But at a certain point, and she had developed an ability, she would be able to enter into a very deep state of consciousness, and she was able to help countless beings, and every day she wouldn't stop her meditation until she helped a certain number of beings. And the religious men of the time, the monks of the time, this was much earlier than Buddha Shakyamuni, I can't tell you exactly when, it's a story that Buddha himself taught, and these monks went to her and said, "You are marvelous. What you do is wonderful, and we pray strongly that you can be reborn as a man so that you can reach enlightenment for the benefit of all beings." And she answered, "I will reach enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, but in the body of a woman, because what reaches enlightenment is neither male nor female. What goes, the very subtle mind and body that goes from life to life, has no gender. So many have done it in the body of a man. I will do it in the body of a woman." And that she did. That's why Tara represents also the enlightened being in the aspect of a woman. But it goes much beyond the gender. But we live in this body where we have our duality, and here we have it represented in male and female, many meanings. And one meaning is, we all have the same potential independently of whether in this life we are a man or a woman. What's important is that when we stop and we try to connect with antidotes and qualities, very often it's hard to identify and induce these antidotes. For example, if just feeling love, stability, joy for the happiness of others. It's not obvious for us to be able to connect with these characteristics. It's much easier often to highlight or put our finger on anger, jealousy, mindfulness, etc. And that's why in the Vajrayana path we use these archetypes where one identifies himself, one identifies with these characteristics to be able to familiarize oneself with these states of being. And then there's a whole other part, how can I say, important, deeper, that I'll explain it I'll explain if we have time later. I'll explain it. Otherwise, it'll be for another time. Lama Michel Rinpoche, when he came to the West in 1981, 1982, at the beginning of 1980s, he took a commitment that for 10 years he wouldn't teach because first of all, he wanted to know the mentality and the culture of the West before being able to teach. And around 1992, he started teaching, adapting what he had received to our own reality with what then became known as the practice of self-healing. Actually, all of his teachings have the name self-healing. And the first time they wanted to make a transcription of his teachings, the first time he was in the West, he would do workshops, and then we needed a title, which was very strange for a Tibetan Lama. I'm giving teachings, just come and follow my teachings. Just giving a title teaching originally, that was very strange. Instead, they asked for, he needed to give a title, and Rinpoche chose self-healing. He said, we need to learn that it depends on us. As we said the other day, one of the phrases that Buddha would cite and Rinpoche would remind us, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy, my state of health depends on me, my own state of sickness depends on me. And the expression self-healing has even a deeper meaning. Self-healing, we cure ourselves, we heal our identity on a deeper level. And Rinpoche, when he taught the practice of self-healing, he started sharing it in a very open and simple way. And I have to say that I had the opportunity to study many different types of Vajrayana practices. And for me, not the most beautiful, that's not the right word, the most accessible, the most beneficial is absolutely the practice of self-healing, of Lama Ganchen. And one quality that Rinpoche had among many was the courage like I've never seen before. When he saw something that he thought was right, the world could turn against him, but he would stay sure, because the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism is very strong. But as one master said once, it's not by eating momos that one reaches enlightenment. It's not through the culture of Tibetan culture that one reaches enlightenment. To say that we can use different melodies, and Rinpoche really tried to. He was able to adapt himself to our reality. In the early years, he was heavily criticized. Rinpoche, what he did was he created the practice of self-healing. He made a video explaining the practice. He made a book. He sent it to the Dalai Lama and the main masters, and he asked, he said, "What do you think of this? So if you have something to say, tell me." And then in Milan, he organized a kind of conference of the he organized a kind of conference of the main Gelupa masters, who were many, at a hotel organized by Franco Ceccarelli, our friend. And he showed the practice and he said, if you have something to say, say it. And that last part of Om Ahum, they said, maybe that's a little secret. That was the only thing they said. But at the time, initially, there were people who criticized him through that event. That Lama who criticized him said, no, this isn't right. And but then he came to him and said, um, he came to him, Lati Rinpoche, a master of many of them. He was also president and came in and apologized and said, I was wrong, I hadn't understood. And in those years, there was a master named Geshe Tendar, who was recognized in India as one with the best knowledge of Tantra, of Vajrayana, without there had been a conference in India with the most important older monks organized by the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama had chosen questions relative to the main points of meditation, and the Dalai Lama said, let's clarify and let's talk about these points. And in that conference, the only one who was able to answer all of the questions in a consistent way was Geshe Tenda. And he hadn't been very well known up until then. He didn't have very many disciples. He was the disciple of the same master of Lama Ganchen. And so he came to Milan, and Lama Ganchen had showed him the practice of self-healing. And Geshe Tenda was from the region of Kham. He was the kind of in the region of Kham. They're Tibetan cowboys. They're very direct. They would like a man who doesn't know how to kill another man is not really a man. They're still very, very direct. Anyway, strangely, this region of Tibet is where the people are considered to be a little aggressive. The most important masters have actually come from this region, and Geshe Tender was very direct, and Lama Ganchen was in Via Marco Polo in Milan, and Geshe Tender was sleeping where now reception is, and Rinpoche was about to go into the Gompa, and he took him aside and he said, "Oh, Kusho," is a way in Tibetan to say Lama, but like peer to peer, a very familial way. And he just took him from the lapel and he brought him towards him, and he was older than Lama Ganchen. He brought him close and he looked in his face and he said, "I finally understood what you did." Making reference to self-healing, you gave the root of your heart. Many will criticize you, but don't answer. I will answer on your behalf. And then he added some things for self-healing. For example, when we do Om Mani Padme Hum, the order of the hands, he said, you can do this, you can do that. There's some small details. And then soon after, he left his body. I had the task to bring the practice of self-healing and explain it to masters in Tibet, and they were always very pleasantly surprised, astonished, because it's compact and clear, but at the same time it's secret. Everything is there. There's the whole path. It's a practice that is good for those who are just beginning, and it's a practice that is also valid for who is about to reach enlightenment. But there are certain aspects that are quote unquote secret, not taught. They're taught in very special contexts, and they're there. But if you don't understand, you don't see them, you don't understand. So it's a practice that has great worth. Everything that Lama Ganchen taught us and left us, I think that his greatest his greatest heritage is the practice of self-healing. So I'd like to share with you very briefly the practice of self-healing because it's a form of meditation but uses mostly visualization. And within there's breathing, visualization, there's recitation, and there's also the hand movements, the so-called mudras. What we saw initially is that meditation means to take to bring us to states of consciousness, to familiarize ourselves with states of consciousness. In Vajrayana, the sadhanas, which is the translation of recitation and visualization, the visualization is used in two different ways. One, the recitation we use to guide and direct our mind along a path that one follows in visualizations, etc., because words direct our thoughts. And another is because sound is vibration and vibration is energy. So certain words have also this function of having a certain energetic vibration. That's why the descriptions are translated, but the mantras are not. And we're not going to get into details about that now. The part of gestures, they also direct our energy and direct our mind. The hand movements has an important worth. And just an example, try to do this gesture. Open your hand and open it and rest it on your leg. Do this and try to think, I don't want to give this to you. Is it natural, or is your hand, is there resistance in your hand? Because what's the message behind this gesture? I'm giving, I'm sharing. This is the gesture of generosity. And what happens, the gesture in itself speaks many more than words. Or if I take my hand and I touch the ground, this is a gesture of stability. This is a stable mind. The ground represents stability. And this is the mudra of fearlessness, non-fear. The mudra of wisdom is a little bit harder to understand. Lama Ganchen would call it the okay mudra, because when there's wisdom, everything's fine. I've eliminated ignorance, everything's fine. But this gesture represents the transmitting of the Dharma. But Lama Ganchen would call it the okay mudra. So in the practice of self-healing, we have recitation, we have the gestures, we have visualizations. As we said a few days ago, they have an enormous power of directing our mind. So it's not that it's not alternative to the techniques we've seen. It's the next step. One could even spend his whole life meditating silently, which was wonderful. One could, at the same time, meditate on the antidotes and think about the situations that would the poisons and applying our antidotes. As I just explained before, Buddha explained in different ways because we are all different. But the Vajrayana, one characteristic of the Vajrayana is many methods put together. And in this case, meditation, the mind is not still on one object, but instead the mind is on a path. There are practices that have many different levels and different ways of practicing. I don't want to explain certain things. It could seem like it's too difficult. I'll just give you a quick example. For example, we look at the gestures. There are 5 main mudras. If you look at these drawings, look at Amoghasiddhi represented at our secret chakra at the basis of our spinal cord. This is the gesture of fearlessness. Then we have, it can be resting on your thigh or held up a little bit. Mijikpechagya. This the mudra of fearlessness. Then we have Ratnasambhava at our navel, of generosity. Then we have Akshobhya at our heart with the mudra of stability that touches the ground, the earth-touching mudra. Then we have Amitabha at our throat with the mudra of meditative concentration. Then we have Verochana at our crown with the mudra of wisdom. What is similar among all of these mudras? The left hand is always the same and still, but it's part of the mudra. The left hand has its own position. So you see that the left hand is always in the same position. What is that position of that left hand? It's the position of the meditative concentration. The left part of our body is the female energy, the part of wisdom. Wisdom is recognized as being the female part, and method is understood as love and compassion, and that is the male energy. In our culture, we have the tendency of thinking the opposite, but this wisdom is much more intuitive, non-conceptual. It's this way of perceiving reality. It's not our way of reasoning. And compassion isn't feeling, oh, poor people. No, it's acting for the benefit. We're acting to take away suffering and to bring happiness. So the left side, wisdom, so the correct view of reality. So the left hand that is in the posture of meditative concentration, this is a key point in Vajrayana. So if for real experts, one should never lose the awareness of the lack of inherent existence of phenomena. Everything appears in a different way, a different color, a different form. There's many visualizations one can do. There are different appearances, like we can have the appearance of the microphone and the table and the bell, but everything is of the same nature. So the right hand shows the action, the relative reality. The left hand shows absolute reality. And it's the union that exists. There's an interaction with the world. There is a difference among everything, but at the same time, everything is of the same nature. I'm just giving just a few highlights here. It's not that in the Vajrayana meditation, there is a part where we need to generate the single-pointed concentration, but our focus stays on the ultimate nature of reality, based on love and compassion, and then a part of our mind goes and follows different visualizations. But normally when we begin, we concentrate on the visualizations, and we don't have this this single pointed concentration, single pointed meditation. So instead of just having one point, it's a path that we follow. There's a path that we follow where one should keep one's concentration on that. pacifying. We are focused not on just on one object, but on this path. This path starts in the following way. There are preliminaries where we generate our motivation and we remember why we're here, what we want to do, why we want to do it. We generate love towards ourselves, love towards others. This is the foundation without getting into too many details. We explained not too long ago, we explained all the preliminaries in the what we call the six dharmas of the six dharmas of preparation. Then there's this first marvelous passage for me. I think it's marvelous. Sorry, I'm just trying not to get into too many details. Otherwise, we'll get lost. There are things that I like. Anyway, what happens is... okay. This object here, it's a bell, right? Or it's a cup. Right? It depends, right? But the reality, you know, if we're sincere, it's a bell. But what we saw is that phenomena exist not in an autonomous, objective, independent way. They're also the union of parts to which we attribute a meaning. We give it an identity. We have a mental image that we then attribute to that object, and then every part is actually is actually a union of other parts. So what am I? What are the parts that make us up? Body and mind. Buddha described the basis of imputation of the self. What am I? The definition of self as the imputation, the identity of me, based on 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates, in a few words, would be body and mind. So the body is 1, and the mind is divided into 4. So we have feeling. So pleasurable, unpleasurable or neutral, discernment, this is this, that is that. Compositional factors, these traits that make up our thoughts and emotions. And the 5th, which is called consciousness, which in reality, I mean, it would be enough to say body and consciousness, the mind. I mean, if we study more detailed way, the 5 factors, the 5 aggregates, we have body, primary mind, and then the mental factors are divided into 3, sensation or feeling, and discernment, and compositional factors. What does this mean? Let me just give you a simple example. Let's take a plate of food. If I show you, you know, spaghetti, we're in Italy. Okay, let's take spaghetti with tomato sauce. This would be the primary mind. What are the main ingredients? What is spaghetti with tomato made of? It's spaghetti, tomato, and all the rest. So if we were to divide up, so first is the spaghetti with tomato is the whole plate. Then we have the ingredients. We have pasta, we have tomatoes, and all the rest. Similarly, our mind, the aggregate of consciousness, is the union of everything. and the ingredients of our mind, we have sensation, discernment, and all the rest. In reality, it would be enough to say the primary mind and then all the ingredients that make up that primary mind. But Buddha chose to give emphasis to two main ingredients that make up our mind, which are sensations or feeling and discernment. And I'd like to explain in one of the next courses, I'd like to explain the 51 mental factors, these ingredients of our mind. So why did Buddha give so much emphasis to feeling and discernment? Because he said that most of our conflicts come from attachment to feeling or discernment. Why do I want one object more than another? Because I want to have this feeling of pleasure and avoid the feeling of pain. It's saying that if someone has developed himself spiritually and is not attached to feeling or sensation, but it's possible that he stays attached to his discernment, what he thinks. So what am I? I am the name I. So like when I asked, what is this book is nothing other than a concept, a name, a book attributed to a union of parts. I have a cover and I have pages and all the rest. In the same way, the I is a name, an identity, self, I, me, that is attributed to a union of parts, body, mind, and the mind can be divided up into primary mind, which is called consciousness, the mind of the mind of the five senses plus the self of the sense of the mind, so the 6 types, and then sensation and discernment and all the other ingredients. Those are the 5 aggregates, the basis of the self. But with these same ingredients, how many different dishes can we make? If we take the same ingredients, can we just make that one dish, or can we think of other dishes, other ones? But not just that. If we take the same elements and we looked at them from different perspectives, can they become different things? This object, for example, how many different things can it become? Can it be? Countless. I can't say infinite, but countless. It can be a weapon. It can be a paperweight. It can serve countless functions, and ourself as well. The problem that we have with ourselves is that just like the bell, I see it as a bell in an intrinsic, objective way. The identity that we have of ourselves is the same. It seems to us as if we existed in an objective, autonomous way. I'm like this, and end of story. But if we analyze ourselves, there is a body and a mind with all of its parts. The body has its parts, the mind has its part, but beyond this, there's also an identity, and the basis of the practice of self-healing is transforming our identity of body and mind, all the aggregates, but transform the way we see ourselves, change the identity that we give ourselves. And in the Vajrayana, we say that the principal cause of suffering is ordinary appearance and the grasping at ordinary appearance. We mean by ordinary appearance as seeing ourselves as a suffering being, intrinsically, I am like this. Instead, one needs to realize that we lack inherent existence. And what changes reality more than anything else is the way that we perceive reality. So what happens is the main point of this path is being able to imagine ourselves as a perfectly realized being, a Buddha. But here, there are two different ways. The more common way, where one tries, I visualize myself like I dress up in a costume for carnival, or I imagine Buddhas printed on, within me. Or I do the practice of Tara. We just did the retreat. We say, I'm Tara. So I see myself as Tara, is this female body. I'm green, I'm emerald green in color. But it's no, I shouldn't see myself as Tara. I need to be Tara in my perception. But how can I be and live as if I were a Buddha if I still have this identity, this suffering identity that I have? So then we need to die. So one of the first parts of the meditation, what I said I like so much, is a fundamental point of part of self-healing practice. We simulate the process of death, not to to not to meditate on death. There are those kinds of meditations, to meditate on impermanence, but no, we get in touch with the part, the more subtle part of ourselves, the deeper part of ourselves that transcends this life. And this part of the meditation, we simulate our death. It helps us remove this identity of ourselves that we have. And on the base of that, we generate ourselves in a pure aspect. We imagine this process where we see ourselves as a Buddha in all the different parts of our body and in the different chakras. The Buddhas develop that represent our qualities that develop. Principally, there are 5 that represent our 5 aggregates. Vairochana is the body, white. And the other are aspects of the mind. Red is discernment. Is blue is consciousness. Yellow is sensation, and green is the compositional factors. These are the 5 that are the basis of our identity, and gradually we transform one after the other, and at the end we identify ourselves with our 5 aggregates in their pure state. Each one of these Buddhas represent also qualities that have a connection with our body. From the crown, Vairochana crown represents wisdom and in opposition to ignorance. At our throat, Amitabha represents satisfaction, concentration, the opposite of attachment, desire, unlimited desire, and dissatisfaction. At our heart, we have Akshobhya, stability, love, compassion, joya, in opposition to hate, instability, impatience, anxiety, sadness, and anger. At our navel, yellow Ratnasambhava represents humility, generosity, generated to its maximum potential, in opposition to miserliness and arrogance. When we talk about humbleness, we talk about our ability to be in harmony with ourselves and others without having to compare ourselves to others to see ourselves. It's not about seeing ourselves inferior. And Amoghasiddhi at our secret chakra, green in color, is power of realization, which means the ability to have certainty in our actions. It's the opposite of doubts, and it's the joy and the joy for the virtue and actions of others. It's the opposite of envy and jealousy. So we gradually identify which each one of these qualities. And this process helps us identify with and generate these qualities. So our focus is about developing our qualities to their maximum potential. And gradually we familiarize ourselves more and more and more. We generate an identity, a pure identity. I try to I don't know if I created more confusion or clarity. Here's a question. It's very simple here. One, here we have male and female, because the feminine aspects represents elements. So we have green is wind, yellow is at our navel chakra. Sorry, the secret chakra is wind, and yellow at our navel is earth. Earth. At our heart, we have the element of water, and the water element, she's white. And at the throat, we have the element fire, she's red. And at our crown, we have space, the element space, and she's blue. Because the great mothers represent the pure state of the elements. And there are many, many different types of there are other meditations where they have the same colors, but here the blue and the white are inverted.
Guardiamo. Ok, no, Chiara che sta traducendo non sente la domanda, quindi vado a rispondere.
So the question is, in certain mandalas, the white is in the center, and in other mandalas, it's blue. And is it for the same reason? He says, no. If we look above and we see these 108 mandalas, other than the form being square, round, what else is similar? The 5 colors. They all have the same colors, the same 5 colors. All Vajrayana practices start from the 5 Dhyani Bhutas. There's no meditation practice among thousands that doesn't connect itself with the 5 Dhyani Bhutas, which is a transformation of our body and mind, our 5 aggregates. The 5 colors also represent white. Is normally the white or the blue is connected to the east, yellow south, the red to the west, and the green to the north. The white there are 4 different types of energies or types of actions. We can energy to pacify, white, and one gets to the from east to south. We pacify, and then at the south we have this ability to increase. So we pacify conflicts and we increase qualities. And then we get to the red, this ability to influence, this power of the power of influence. And then in the north, the green, we have this ability, we have this action of opposition. And in the center is often blue, is the union of all 4 types of action. So pacification, increase, influence, and opposition. Every mandala, in reality, when we look at all these mandalas, it's symbolism that represent a meditative path. And instead of having it written down, like first visualize this and then visualize that, it's put here in in a symbolic way. And unfortunately, today we don't understand except for street signs because we're familiar with them, but we're not able to read the symbols. As we're in the past, they didn't know how to read, and so these mandalas show a meditative practice, and they all are based on these 5 aspects. And some practice give emphasis to one, or other practices give emphasis to another. But and the emphasis that's given in that practice is in the center. So if the emphasis on our heart, love and compassion, patience, etc., transformation of the aggregate of consciousness, then it's blue in the center. And often the emphasis is given either to the crown or to the chakra of the heart. So if it's akshobhya, aggregate of consciousness, then we have akshobhya at the center, which is the majority of practices. Otherwise, white is in the center. When we did this, Lama Ganchen wanted all of the practices to be present. So if we look above, we have the colors on the ceiling, and we have blue in the center. The center is blue. And within, we have the mandala of Borobudur in Indonesia, and at the center is white, Vairochana. And then again, we have the 5 colors. And the south is red. The west is the west is yellow. Here instead, north is not green but is black, and that recalls the practice of Kala Chakra, which is different than all others. Let's just take advantage of the fact that we have these mandalas on the ceiling just to understand the practice of self-healing. It's divided mostly into 3 parts. The first part are preliminaries, then where we generate our motivation. Then there's that second part where we generate what's called the body mandala, where within our chakras, crown, throat, heart, navel, and secret chakra, we generate these bhuttas that represent our qualities that gradually develop to their maximum potential. So we start from a seed syllable, the potential that we have, that gradually develops into a symbol, and then it reaches its complete form as a Buddha. If we do the practice of self-healing in a complete way, we develop also both the male and female Buddhas. And we do that with the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, and they're also the 5 Great Mothers, and then they unite just for gender equality. But what happens is we have this part where we develop our qualities. After that, there's the other part of the practice where, for those who know the practice, we do Om Mani Padme Hum. When we slap our hands and snap our fingers, and then Om Mahasukha and Bishwa Shanti. And if you look at the mandala in the center, look from the outside, any side, wherever you are, we see you have the lotus flowers, and here we're generating our body, we're balancing our subtle energy, and then we have the seed syllables. We recognize our potential, and we access our potential. Then we have the symbol, which is the development of our potential. And then we have the Buddha, who's our quality realized to its maximum potential. And then we meditate on that specific Buddha. Then we have the same thing in the center for Vairochana. Then we repeat that with Vairochana. So we have 3 circles, white, red, and blue, and there's a yellow one that you can just barely see. This is the second part of the practice, which in reality is the most important part of the practice and also the hardest part, and I'll just touch on it so that you know that it's something that is there, and little by little you can familiarize yourself with it. One of the very important characteristics of Vajrayana Buddhism is the following. How can I say? In a simple way. We've seen that the root of our suffering is our own ignorance. But our ignorance, as the root of our suffering, is it on a conceptual level, or is that a deeper, spontaneous level? Did someone teach us that phenomenon are of intrinsic existence? No, it's at a very, very deep level. It's said that this can be found at this very subtle level of our mind. But we said before that our mind cannot think of 2 opposite things at the same things. But if I have a gross level mental defilement, then I can generate an antidote on the coarse level. But if I have poison at a subtle level, I can't generate a gross level antidote. I need to bring that antidote deeper, to a more subtle level. So the gradual the gradual path is that we start on a coarse level, and then like one layer after the other, we go deeper and deeper. It's a long process. It's possible. It's very long. I mean, the idea behind Vajrayana instead of going layer by layer from coarse level to the very subtle. What if I went straight to the very subtle level? So there are tools, physical tools, energetic tools to bring the person to a level of deeper consciousness, a non-conceptual consciousness. And our mind, when our gross level of consciousness ceases, the more subtle mind manifests itself more easily. But the mind is directed by that previous thought. So entering into deep levels of consciousness is nothing special. If I'm in a deep state of lust or attachment, and I enter into a deep state of consciousness, I'm familiarizing myself with attachment. So instead, I need to develop my antidote and generate a deeper level of consciousness, so that I can familiarize myself with that antidote of love or wisdom on a deeper level. So our body is directly linked to our mind, and there are certain things that happen in our body that bring our mind to a deeper state of consciousness naturally. The most obvious, the strongest, is death itself. When one dies, the gross part of oneself ceases, and then the subtle part ceases, and the very subtle manifests. That's why the state of consciousness that one has at the moment of death will direct the subtle mind, that will then direct the very subtle mind, that will direct it will direct one's future after death. But we'll talk about this another time. So in Vajrayana, we use the natural processes of the body and we induce them through meditation to bring the practitioner to a deeper level of consciousness, a state of love and wisdom. And this is what is represented by this last part. In reality, that square part of the mandala is the gross part, coarse part, body and mind on a coarse level. The round part is the subtle part, and that very last part, yellow part, is the very subtle part. Our body and mind on a very subtle level. So what's the objective? To familiarize ourselves on a non-conceptual level, but to familiarize myself on a non-conceptual level, first I need to generate that state on a conceptual level, keep it, and then induce a deeper level. So the first part of the practice is useful to generate this virtuous state on a gross level, and then as I'm in this virtuous state on a gross level, then I go deeper to deeper levels of consciousness. I'm not going to open up another door here. Something that's important in the practice of self-healing for me, I've always seen it like this, a self-healing practice, like many other practices, is a bit like technology in the sense that when I pick up a phone and I call someone, I'm able to talk to that person. But if to use the phone, I needed to understand how it worked, I wouldn't be able to. I mean, is there anyone who really knows who knows how this little machine works? You know, that's able to transform. Is there anyone who really understands this whole process of transformation from digital to analogical, etc.? Is there anyone who really knows how a telephone works? I have no idea. But I use this phone. And we have this tendency of wanting to understand. I mean, is it possible to understand how a phone works? Yes. One needs to spend some time and understand how, understand certain concepts. And in the same way, there's nothing in Buddhism in general, in Vajrayana specifically, there's nothing that cannot be understood. But it requires a whole path. But it's not because one doesn't understand right away that it doesn't work. And here, different masters have said meditation, a meditation technique should be tried, and one feels the benefits, and little by little, one then understands the practice. One deepens the practice and then can understand the practice. Something that's also really important. Lama Kanchen gave us the permission to practice. If you're at the beginning and you use it as a technique to relax, that's fine. Or if you want to follow the path towards enlightenment, that's fine too. But even if he gave the permission to everyone to practice it, what's important in all Buddhist tradition is the oral transmission. Because I received something that was given to me from my master, and my master received it from his master. And there's a lineage that's uninterrupted that goes all the way to to Buddha Shakyamuni. And there are some practices that one can't do without having received the transmission. Lama Ganchen from the beginning said that self-healing is open to everyone, but if you have the transmission, even better. So what I'd like to do before concluding these days, this course, I'd like to recall that I'd like to dedicate a few days to explain the practice of self-healing well, because to understand it really, really well from beginning to end, we need the last time I did it, a complete explanation, sessions of 2 hours. We needed about 14. We can do it also in a weekend, but
Cosa che voglio poter approfondire. Io ho voluto dare una pennellata sull'autoguarigione, portare.
But I wanted to bring up the practice of self-healing to show you that there are other possibilities. Meditation on our breath is marvelous and should be maintained, and we should do it with constancy. But here, with the practice of self-healing, if we do it well, is very powerful to help us generate and maximize our qualities and overcome our mental defilements. And if you're interested, there are videos, but here, given that we're all here together, I'd like to give you a transmission, and then afterwards we'll have a final conclusion. Transmissions can be done in 2 different ways. One where, actually 3, if we wanted, where there's a repetition, one says and the others repeat, or an oral transmission is a little longer, where one who has received, the one who has received, he recites it, and those who receive listen. There are masters who spend months and months giving oral transmissions. Once at a time, the lineage of there was a time where the sutras of Buddhas, the oral lineage that came from the time of Buddha, was risking to be lost. But at the time, and there was only a lady who had all of the transmission of all the sutras, but she was blind and deaf, and so they would get together, and what she would do is they would go near her and they would yell into her ear, and then she would repeat back all the sutra of Buddha's, the Kangyo. It took years to maintain the oral transmission alive. There's a lama that Lama Ganchen invited here before leaving his body. He invited him here. He asked him to give, for the first time in the West, the transmission of all the sutras of Buddhas that he's able to do. He has the oral transmission himself, and then he would hand it down through this recitation that is done outside. And it said that when we receive an oral transmission, it's something physical that is given. There's a connection that is made between we who receive and he who is who had received it and is giving to us. And it's in the Tibetan tradition, it's very clear. It says you can take any practice, but if you haven't received the oral transmission, it will only stay conceptual. You'll never have any realizations. Even philosophy itself and teachings, if there's not a transmission from heart to heart, it will just stay on a conceptual level. This is explained and handed down. That's why the direct transmission from heart to heart is extremely important. Now I'll do the following. I'll do a quick recitation as a transmission, and then we can, together, we can do a very short practice of self-healing together without getting into details, without explanations. Otherwise, we open up an entire world and it's not the moment. But I leave you this imprint, the seed. So, we visualize that above me, my crown, is my own root guru, Lama Michel Rinpoche. Above him, his masters, one after the other, all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni. There's a flow of light and nectar that goes from heart to heart, master to master, getting to Lama Michel Rinpoche's heart, and from his heart comes to my heart. And from my heart, it is transmitted to your heart, the heart of each one of you. And this light and nectar, there's the essence of the practice, the essence of the teachings. Now I recite it. Those who know the practice, please remain in silence.
Namo Gurubhyo Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sanghaya Namo Triratnaya Sangye Chodam Soke Chonam Lajanjo Bardo Dani Keso Cheda Ke Chinso Kebe Sonan Ke Trola Penche Sangye Druparsha Simchen Tamche Dewadan Deve Gyudan Tempar Kyoche Simchen Tamche Dunga Da Dunga Ken Gyudan Trawak Simchen Tamche Dunga Mebe Dewadan Mi Drewa Kyoche Simchen Tamche Nyeren Chadan Nidan Trewe Danyola Nepar Kyoche Simchen Tamche Luzim Ke Dunga Le Soshin Trayo Luzim Dewadan Tempar Kyoche Simchen Tamche Ngasa Dobji China Nujo Koryo Danshi Zamane Kyoche Simchen Tamche Dan Zambolingi Kendro Dadachi Nangi Shide Dan Tukun Tempar Kyoche Tamche Doni Sashida Semala Zame Badala De Danyo Bendori Rashi Jamboni Kyoche Lada Miye Chebe Zengo So Shadan Yekito Kunsan Chirin Lana Menam Ke Kango Kyogurji Omonamo Bhagavate Benza Sarva Pramadani Tadakata Yara De Samya Sambuddha Yataya Tam Benzema Teza Benzema Vidya Benzema Bodhichita Maha Bodhi Mandepa Sangramana Benze Sarva Karma Avarana Vishadana Benze Soha Kunjo Sungedem Bada Sangeda Janjo Sempatam Cheki Jingiladan Sunion Sobenga the Jimodan Cheki number Tajin Samgemi Gabe to Gede Shini to Kuroche Malu Simje Kungi Kungi to the Punjamin the Jumzelang Unamaluyanda King Chumden Korchane Dir Shek Suso Gozungabegone Chatsalong Shay to Chubamolo Tomenesa Didom Shaki Bergawana Korwa Matom Bardolation and Rolacho Kolo Korada Shingen and Chancho Chembro Sashi Peki Medalation given Sange Shindo Mik the Ulwarge Drogonam Dashin La Chobrasho Edam Gorada Mandala Kam Niriata Yamim Lojo Sambo Baguraja Baduja and Berlin Yarmada Pegedola Zambezabaja Panela Mejola Sawa de Oma Guru Vajradara Sama de Munisha Zanikarma Uta Vardanya Shri Bada Varsamanya Sarva Sede Hong Oma Guru Buddha Sede Hong Yam Ram Lam Bam Ho Shude Shude So Yo Shude Shude So Yam Ho Shude Shude So Ram Ho Shude Shude So Lam Ho Shude Shude So Bam Ho Shude Shude So Yam Ram Lam Bam Ho Shude Shude So Ha Omo Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddho Ham Pamle Pema Jango Pamle Pema Sarva Pamle Pema Ngombo Pamle Pema Marpo Pamle Pema Karpo Oma Hon Trama Re Helena Dorje Jangore Tamle Norbo Sarva Hole Dorje Ngombo Ale Pema Marpo Omle Korlo Karpo Omo Korlo Nanse Dorje Pema Che Dorje Hon Dorje Mike Dorje Tam Norbo Rinchun Dorje Rinazo Dorje Tenyo Dorje Lama Tenyo Dorje Kenoma Moga Sidi Hon Lama Rinchun Dorje Kenoma Rana Sambavo Lama Mikyo Dorje Kenoma Kshobya Hon Lama Che Dorje Kenoma Mitaba Hon Lama Nanse Dorje Kenoma Veiro Chana Hon Omani Peme 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 Hon Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mahasukha Hum, Om Vishwa Shanti Hum. Lama Kunjo Sumla Kyapso Chirani Lasa Dori Sone Chodonga Chosoni Chotada Gecho Kuntu Chishin Drotun Chi Dorna Ditsunam Kageveso Chini Sabate Nyortuda Norbo Panzo Shambal Har Kene Lame Lam Gerimba Tarchin Sho Om A Hum Pe Om Hum A Tumi Chiwe Tsema Tona Teime Lami Kedorjegu Sevatone Chida Pajum Te Chimeritzi Nyordu Topra Sho Nimo Dele Tsendele Nime Kuyendereshi Ninsen Tauto Delepe Kuncho Sumki Jingelo Kuncho Sumki Ngodrupso Kuncho Sumki Trashi Shon.
Adesso facciamo la pratica.
Now let's do the practice together.
Ci sediamo in una posizione
We sit in a comfortable position
con la schiena dritta,
with our back straight but not tense.
le spalle rilassate.
Our shoulders are relaxed.
Faremo la pratica senza
We'll
dare
do the practice without the explanations. Try simply to follow together with me.
visualizziamo
We visualize our body like a body of light
un canale centrale,
with a central channel and two side channels.
ci permettiamo di
We
essere presenti.
allow ourselves to be present in this present moment. To begin, would you briefly the 9-round breathing exercise? So make the Vajra fist and follow by the 9-round breathing exercise.
Sampo Pagyo Trashi Pa Tuche Tempe Chinle Yarmoda Pegye Drolo Zampe Zebra Che Pande Lame Shabla Solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Buddha 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 Siddhi He Yama Rama Lama Bama Ho Shuddhe Shuddhe Svoha Om Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Swabhava Shuddha Pamle Pema Changu Pamle Pema Serpo Pamle Pema Ngompo Pamle Pema Marpo Pamle Pema Karpo Om Ahum Tamari Rile Natso Torje Jangore Tramle Norbo Serpo Tram Hungle Dorje Ngompo Hung Ale Pema Marpo A Omle Korlo Karpo Omo Korlo Nangse Dorje Apema Che Dorje Hong Dorje Mikyo Dorje Trama Norbo Rinchon Dorje Re Natso Dorje Tuyun Dorje Lama Tuyun Dorje Kin Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Om Moga Siddhi Hum Lama Rinchon Dorje Ken Sambhava Hum. Om Aratna Sambhava Hum. Om Aratna Sambhava Hum. Om Aratna Sambhava Hum. Lama Michel Rinpoche. Om Akshobhya Hum. 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 Lama Chodor Jekin. Om Amitabhahum. Om Amitabhahum. Om Amitabhahum. Om Amitabhahum. Om Amitabhahum. Lama Nangze Dorje Kin. Om Aveirochana-hum. Om Aveirochana-hum. Om Aveirochana-hum. Om Aveirochana-hum. Om Aveirochana-hum. Rangni kechige dorje chantu kyu. Om mani peme hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mahasukha 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 Hum. Om Vishwa Shanti Hum. Lama kuncho sumla kyepso chi rangni la se dotri sungne che donga cho so nyer che tada dom gecho kundo chi shinro dunji dorna di tsu namkara gewe tsu chi nye sapa te inyur tuda norbu panzo shambal har kene lame lamgi rimpa tar chi shum. Om Michi vetse ma tongwa na te ime la mi kyo dor che ku se wa tong ne chi da pa chom te chi me rik si nyur tu to parashum nimo de le tsen de le ni me ku yan de le kshin Nin sen ta to de lek pe sum ki jingi lo concho sum ki ngo drubo tso concho sum ki tra shi shom.
In this way, we conclude this part of sharing the basis of self-healing. And the feeling that I have in this moment is like in these days that we've spent together, I've tried the best possible to share with you some treasures that I myself have received, to give this feeling of giving. And in the end, we've concluded with one of the most precious treasures that I've received. And we also looked at the correct view of reality, and the practice of self-healing and the Vajrayana practice. More than explain it, I tried to give a seed with this transmission, a seed that I leave you. But I have this feeling a little bit like when we go on a trip. I don't know if it's ever happened to you. You go on a trip, and at a certain point, they give us something, and we don't know how to fit it in our suitcase. Has that ever happened to you? In the trips I've taken to India and Tibet, that would happen. That would happen a lot, where we would have an infinite number of suitcases, and we wouldn't know how to do something. How we wouldn't know how to manage to get it home. And if I receive something precious, while traveling, how can I manage to get that home? You know, or I pay for extra luggage, or if my suitcase is full, what do I need to do? I need to choose what I want to take home. The life of each one of us is really quite full. I'm sure that at home you have many things to do. You need to take care of your own habits, your body and your health, your own habits, your house, your children, jobs. Life is full, isn't it? And what happens is when you get home today, with this gift that I've given you, and if you want, it's up to you to take care of it, or instead, if you weren't particularly touched by it, you can leave it here. You don't necessarily have to take it home with you. Meditation in silence, self-healing, everything we've seen. Instead, if we think that this is a gift that has value, that is important, and I want to take it home, just like we need to make room in our suitcase, we need to make space in our lives, because if we don't create space in our lives for our spiritual practice, like meditation, etc., regardless of the type of meditation, if we don't create space for the practice, what's going to happen is that it's going to stay as a it will stay as wishful thinking, a virtuous thought, like, oh, it would be so wonderful to meditate. How wonderful would it be if I could meditate? I had a wonderful 3-day experience. I was able to concentrate. I had good feeling. Oh, it would be so wonderful if I could meditate always. But how could I? How can I imagine? Where would I do it? Now we need to make the space for it. We need to make room. What's the definition of space? Tore kaksam gigmekpa in Tibetan. The definition of space that's given is the non-affirmative negation of obstruction. It's the lack of the mere non-existence of obstructive contact. If I asked you, inside this glass, is there space for more water? Yes. But is the glass empty, or is there something? No, there's air, because if there was nothing in this glass, then an airplane wouldn't be able to fly. So what happens is, but why is there space for water? Because there is no obstruction to the water. Is there space between us? Yes, because there's no obstruction. You know, and we're able to move one towards the other, and there's no obstruction to our view between us. But the lack of space, if there's space, it means that that thing can exist in that way. There's no obstruction. When is there no space inside? Because it's full of other things. Why is there no space for one feeling? Because it's full of other emotions. So if we have space, then there is no obstruction. So we need to create space in our lives to be able to meditate. And there are some types of space that we need to create. We have some types of things we need to take away. We need to create a physical space. That means where we live, we need to determine a physical place to meditate, designate a place for meditation. So the best would be to designate an entire room, but I don't know how many of you have a house that's big enough to be able to dedicate an entire room. In a house, I mean, why do we have a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen? Because we have different activities. So there's the bedroom is for sleeping, the bathroom is for reading. Also depends. Each one has its own habits. And we have our kitchen for cooking, and our living room for hanging out, for chatting, and depending on our resources, we have a dining room, we have our music hall, we have the different rooms for different activities. Why not have a room? How about just an open space? There's one room for everything. The reason why we designate spaces is because that helps us do that activity better. For example, those who have trouble sleeping, it's one thing that's said is to not do other activities other than sleep, because if you start doing other things in the bedroom, then it becomes more of an office, for example, or a den. In the Indian tradition and in sacred architecture of the kind of like the Indian feng shui, I've read very little, but what I've seen, it says that a house that is designed well is when you go into your bedroom, you want to sleep. When you go into the kitchen, you want to cook. And when you go into your dining room, you want to eat. You know, instead, if you go into the kitchen and you want to sleep, your house is not set up well. So we designate the spaces that we have at home according to the activities that we have. So if you love music, then maybe you have a space dedicated specifically to music. So if we think meditation is important, then we should dedicate a space for that. Because if we don't have a dedicated space, what happens is we don't know where to go. I want to meditate, but my husband, my wife is over there, my children over there, and there's the radio. And where am I supposed to go? And then we have physical obstructions. And so we need to create space for meditation. If we don't have space for an entire room, then we try to dedicate a corner in a room. If that's not possible, at least have a cushion, a small rug that we use to meditate. And we know that on that cushion, on that rug, we sit exclusively to meditate for our spiritual practice, and we don't use it for anything else. And we can designate a couple places where we can sit and do our practice. Beyond just the physical practice, we need time, the temporal space. Have something magic in our lives, which is called our agenda. I don't know if it happens only to me, or you write that on that day you need to do that thing, and then somehow, for some reason, you're obligated to do that thing because it's written there in your calendar. Okay, today what do you need to do? I don't know what's written down in the agenda. For a long time, I refused to have an agenda, but then I had no alternative. It was. But the fact is, we organize our time every day. For example, if I need to get to work at 8, how much time do I need to get to work? At 40 minutes. So at 7:15, I need to be out the door. And before I leave the house, what do I need to do? I need to get dressed. I need to have breakfast. And so I need an hour. Okay, what time do I need to wake up? 6:15. If I need to meditate too, then I wake up at 6 and I do 10 minutes of meditation. So if in my schedule of what I need to do, I need to create temporal space to meditate. Otherwise, I want to meditate, but there's an obstruction because I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, that, and the other. And we have so many things to do. And there's something else. We're a little lazy. And so, yes, I know I should meditate, but I don't feel like it. It would be nice. It would be good. And there are 4 types of laziness. The first type of laziness, there's the openly declared laziness, where one says, I don't feel like it. I'm just feeling lazy. Yes, I know it would be good for me to meditate, but now I don't feel like it. Or I'm just going to stay here on the couch and watch Instagram. That's another form of meditation. Familiarize your mind with something else. The other type of laziness is where we say, oh, yes, obviously I need to meditate. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it later, lunchtime or this evening. Dopo, after, and you never do it. Of course, I could do it now, but I don't really feel like it, so I procrastinate. That's the second type of laziness, procrastination. The third type is absolutely important to meditate. I have to do it. I want to do it now, but I can't do it now. We do something useless instead of doing something important. For example, I get home at the end of the day. I'd like to meditate, but it's Champions League super soccer match, or I need to watch this TV series. I create something that is not important, but I do that instead of doing something else. Once I wanted to do a meditation, and I wanted to do it every day. I was in India, and I would do a very brief version. And I said to myself, on my free day, I'll do the long version. And that day, I wanted to do the long version, but I got up and I started making breakfast. I never used to have breakfast. And then I said, okay, now I'll do the practice. And then I said, oh, the kitchen's really dirty. So I started cleaning the kitchen, and then I started doing this and that, and then the whole day went by, and I didn't do the long version of the practice. So this is the laziness, is where we do something instead of doing that thing that's more important. And the fourth type of laziness is where we bring ourselves down and we say that we're not able. I say, oh, I'd love to do it, but I'm not able. Yeah, I agree. You're not able to sit for 4 hours with perfect concentration, but certainly for 5 minutes, you're able. You're able, right? And it's because we're lazy by nature, because we don't like to get out of our comfort zone, and there will be days where meditating will be very pleasurable and other days where we won't want to do it at all. We need to take away the obstacles. Otherwise, it will be just an excuse to not do it. So we need to create physical space, temporal space, and mental space. I take the commitment to do it. I want to do it. And here there's another aspect that's very important, which is we need to generate a commitment. Taking a commitment has a very special power. When we take a commitment, that holds that activity up. But the commitment has a special characteristic. Once you don't maintain it, you need to start from the beginning. If I have the commitment to meditate 20 minutes every day, the day that I don't do it, it's 3 months can go by before I start again. I don't know if that something like that has ever happened to you. If we say, "Oh, I'm not going to do it for a day," that one day it becomes months. So then to start again, one needs to take a new commitment. So I'm not asking you to take a formal commitment, but I'd like to give you the possibility of taking a commitment with yourselves. We've seen different techniques. The pre-meditation was very important, simply being seated, meditation on our breath, the 9-round breathing exercise, the practice of self-healing that we saw very quickly. There are many techniques. If you found one beneficial, or if you see that this is a meaningful path, take the commitment for a limited amount of time, no longer than 1 month. For 1 week, that's just fine. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month maximum. The commitment is, how long do I think I can meditate every day? An hour? That's a little hard. 40 minutes? How about a half an hour? That's already more pensable. If I think that I can meditate for half an hour every day, take the commitment to meditate 15 minutes every day. So it's very important to take a commitment that's less than what we think we're able to do, because that day that we wake up and we don't want to do that thing, we still do it. So take a commitment. The time that you think is helpful. So I invite you to go home today with a commitment, 15 minutes, a half an hour, what you think is important. And if you're able also to choose the techniques, at least sitting and just being. Take that commitment to just stay still, and then you can add other techniques. But have the commitment to do something, because that commitment holds us up. It supports us along the path. And then after that amount of time is finished, we observe and we ask ourselves if it was beneficial or not. Do I want to renew this commitment or not? Yes, well then we go on for another month or week, whatever it was. There's a community here. There's a community nearby in Torino, the Damanhur, the marriage. Their marriage is for a limited amount of time. When a couple wants to get married, they get married for a maximum of 1 year. and after 1 year, they renew or not their wedding vows. After 5 years, they can renew their vows for 2 years, and every time they renew their vows, they also renew what they want to elaborate together spiritually. Um, so the divorces or separation, uh, the, the number of people the couples who stay together, the percentage of couples who stay together is much greater there than the couples, for example, who take this commitment for life. In our culture, a commitment is lived a little bit as a burden, and when it becomes very heavy, it's difficult to uphold. Instead, if it's for a limited amount of time, we have a commitment for 1 month, and even if it's hard, we say, "Oh, I just have to get through there. I'm almost there." You know, after then we get to 10 days. Oh, only 10 more days, and then we see at the end how we feel, and often we get the courage then to renew our commitment. So we should have a commitment to meet, and this creates space in our minds. And to be able to bring this home and cultivate it, we need to create physical space, temporal space, and mental space. One last thing about this. Once I heard this analogy that I liked, which was the one of the gardener. Imagine a gardener. The gardener wants many flowers in his garden. He loves flowers, but for there to be gardens, where does the gardener need to put his energy? In the actual flowers? In the fertilizer, in the water, in the soil, in weeding. And as a result, what comes out? Flowers. When we saw the meditative state, if we focus too much on that, and then it will be hard to get there. We need to cultivate all the conditions for then that state to manifest, diminish our objects of distractions. Instead, I focus on, if I focus on the flower without thinking about the fertilizer or letting the sun in, the flower is not going to come. Instead, we need to take care of the conditions to allow the flowers to blossom. And in this case, it's important to diminish our distractions, choose our objects of sensory stimulation, and even there, a small commitment is also useful to diminish our external stimuli. Where we say, okay, instead of watching a movie, I pick up a book. There are those who already do that, and there's nothing against watching a film. But if you see that it's a kind of addiction or simply a passive state, mid and long term is harmful. So we take the commitment to read a book, to meditate, to do something else. Try to have this awareness of the sensory stimuli that we receive. So this is the fertilizer, part of the fertilizer. And we allow ourselves just to be. I take care of my health, the way I eat, the whole that allows us to grow and naturally to support those around us. I'm sure that we all have our own problems. There's no one here who doesn't have the problems, and we all want to resolve them. We all want our problems to be resolved, but let's remember that if there's something, is something, the common denominator in all of our problems is our own mind. So it's our mind that faces these problems. So let's allow our mind to relax, to rest, allow ourselves to find more balance, more harmony. It's already an indirect way to find a solution and resolve our problems. I invite everyone to make a treasure of what you've received here and put it into practice. As Lama Ganshin would remind us, he would say, the more important than my long life is the long life of the teachings. And tradition is alive. I mean, what makes a spiritual tradition alive? It's alive when there's a transmission. I transmit, I share with you what I have received. The tradition's not is not living yet, but it's when the other receives, and then after having received, a virtuous transformation comes about. That's when the tradition is kept alive. The virtuous, positive inner transformation of those who receive. Those, and someone might say that the responsibility of keeping a spiritual lineage alive is not it's not the responsibility of he who holds that lineage and transmits, but it's the responsibility of everyone. If we want the future generations, if we want them to have a certain life, then we need to cultivate. It's something that we need to cultivate and realize and then hand down to them. I thank you very much to have been here together with the mind. We're paying attention and with your heart open. I try to the best of my ability to share with you with what is precious to me. I try to do it in an accessible way. Lama Ganshin Rinpoche taught me that one of the most beautiful things, one of the most noble things we can do is to be at the service of others. So I see it as a way of putting myself at your service, by sharing with you. I thank you also because if there's something, this opportunity of sharing the Dharma, and which is one of the most beautiful things I have in my life, if I can do that, it's thanks to you. Thanks to you too. So I thank you, and I learned a lot more teaching than studying, and every time, this process we do together is a kind of analytical meditation that we do together. We review things, we familiarize ourselves with these aspects. Something that's very important. The path that Lama Ganshin transmitted, his way of being and teaching, the way we follow, is not an academic system. Nothing against that. I studied in that way. I come from that education. I would spend hours and hours in debating. I really love it. But it's an approach that is mostly heart to heart. It's a more familial approach. And sometimes people ask me, where should I start from? You need to start where you are. You don't need to go somewhere else. But the real starting point of one's own spiritual practice is it's called tamsik tamsik in Tibetan and samaya in Sanskrit, translated as commitment, but changing the context, the meaning changes. But I found a translation that I liked, which is meeting point, samaya. This meeting point, the most important meeting point between the one who transmits and the one who receives is trust and love. So this this path that we take, first we start by creating this kind of friendship where there's trust and love. And once there's that, we can do so much. And then there are different approaches. I mean, those who will spend their lives meditating in silence, focusing on their breath. Others will be interested in philosophy. There are those instead who like mantras and visualizations. I mean, there are many different ways because we are all different. There's not one single way to follow this path. And Rinpoche would say, he would call it the positive supermarket. So we take what is beneficial, and if we don't feel any kind of affinity to something in this moment, then we just set it aside. Maybe in the future it would be something that would interest us. But what's fundamental is that we're here with our hearts open, heart to heart. This is one of the most important things that exist. And it's said that our spiritual path of inner growth and development, the basis of any path that we take is this open heart, this connection, this trust, and this reciprocal love. This is the most important thing. And so, as Rinpoche would say, see you sometimes, see you every moment. We'll see you sometimes, see you every moment. He would say also because what defines the distance between two people isn't the physical distance, but it's how their mind and hearts are, how close their minds and hearts are. We can sit side by side for years working. We can even sleep in the same bed for years and be far, or we can be separated by thousands of kilometers and be extremely close. So the direction of my heart and my mind, I have given that to you without holding back anything, and I hope that it can be of benefit to you. And I invite you to take and apply to your daily lives what you find beneficial. Remembering that there's no time to waste, that life goes by very quickly. As Kundin Champalyang would say, thinking about doing, 20 years went by. I wasn't able. 20 years went by. Oh, why didn't I do it? 20 years went by. 60 years went by, and this is the biography of an empty life. And we can also medify it a little bit and say, thinking about meditating, 20 years went by. I wasn't able. 20 years went by. Oh, why didn't I do it? 20 years went by. If there's something that we think is important, we need to do it today. Don't let time go by. Create that space. And don't be afraid of being happy. We have the tools in our hands. This is the only thing that I ask you. If there's something that we saw that you really think is beneficial, do whatever is possible to add this to your life, to make it yours. There's no copyright on this. You don't need to say, oh, Lama Michel said this. No, I want this to become your own, if you think it's right. You know, I live in this life. I live like this because that's the way I see it. In the sense I offer what I can offer you, and then it's up to you to see how beneficial you find it and how much you want to apply it to or integrate it into your daily lives. Because remember, our objective here is not to become Buddhist. I mean, the last objective of the center is to make everyone Buddhist. I don't think it's right for the world to live in a Buddhist world. Just for various reasons. I mean, I'm not against Buddhism, but I strongly desire a world where there's more love, respect, gratitude. And the reason why I don't see the world as being completely Buddhist is because we're different. We have different paths to get to the same place. So we need to respect that, and we shouldn't make everyone that fit in the same cutout. But a world where there's more kindness, more love, more wisdom, more respect. So it's time for our dedications. We conclude here.
Alame kutse raptenchi namkra chinle chokchur gepada losan tempe drume sasumki drove munsela takto ne gyurche kewa kunto yanda lamada dralme cheki pela longche ching sada lamge yunten rabzone dorje change kopa nyur toba shu chanama kuna lyudan sim dunga neba chinye pa tedadagi sonam ki dega gyatso topara shu in qualunque direzione qualunque corpo o mente
Any body or mind that is any suffering body or mind may, through our merits, our positive energy that we have generated here in the past, may they all, no matter where they are, reach an ocean of wellness and happiness.
Nyinsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke chingi lop kuncho sumke ngodrubo tsol kuncho sumke trashi shu.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Repeat after me.
Sem chö sudro, chö lam tudro, lam la parce, mion arshon.
May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everyone. And for those of you who are here, tomorrow morning there are There are morning inspirations. Okay, I'm here, but it's actually not in the program.
Grazie a tutti. Adesso vediamo
Thank you.
cosa
Now,
succede.
now we'll see. We'll see what to do.